Hello and welcome to Stretford. Paddock. It is the news Tuesday the 17th of June and we've got loads to talk about today. Transfer season, of course, we're looking at Ekitike. There seems to be an update in terms of what Manchester United want to pay and would be willing to pay for Hugo Ekitike. We're also looking at Antony, his potential move away from Manchester United. There's so much to talk about. Napoli may be interested in Jadon Sancho as well. Napoli seem to be interested in everyone United are selling and actually never end up buying any of them. But there's an opportunity there potentially for Jadon Sancho. There's loads to get into, but first of all, hope everyone is well. Get in the comments, get your thoughts in. We're going through the chat as we go along. But let's start with this Antony to Betis story, because he's obviously fantastic for Betis in the end of last season. From January onwards, was one of their best players. I think Isco got their player of the season, admittedly. But Antony, when he joined, was a revelation. I think he scored 9 goals in the time that he was there, got them to, or helped get them to, the Europa Conference final, where admittedly he didn't play particularly well. But there's clearly keen interest from Betis to keep that deal going after a sensational loan spell. And here's what The Athletic have been saying about this. Real Betis want to sign Antony permanently from Manchester United. Good. Galatasaray still keen on signing Victor. Here you go. Real Betis want Antony to sign permanently after his successful loan spell in Spain. Betis have had conversations with Manchester United to find out their position on his future. This is according to Dermot Corrigan and Mark Critchley. They just need to spend a bit of money. Like, I think that's the thing that United have to do here. There's no sort of second guessing this. There's no, I wonder what we'll have to dot the I's. No, just give us 25 to 30 million quid and you can have him. That's it. There's no, like, more loans. There's no options. There's no this, that and the other. The only way you're getting Antony again, this is if I'm Man United, the only way you're getting him again is if A, you just give us the money and we'll spread it out over 2 years, whatever, who cares, but you pay us 25 to 30 million as the fee, or we do an obligation to buy, and there's none of this, you can pay 5 million to sack it off like Chelsea did with Sancho. It's an obligation to buy, and actually if you do want to sack it off, the price to do that and to send him back is the same as it is to keep him. So if you want to send him back and you don't want to buy him after the end of the loan, it costs you 25 million anyway. That's what United need to do. Because United have to start selling players in order to buy more players in. And Antony is probably at his most valuable that he's been since he signed for Manchester United. Ever since he signed for us, his value has been on a steady decline, or a pretty drastic decline. Then we've seen a little uptick because of how good he was in Spain. He's kind of shown that, even against the bigger teams in Spain, the way that that league plays, the way that the speed and the areas that you find space in that league, it's kind of shown that he can do it there. That teams in other divisions where it's not quite as physical, it's not quite as intense on a kind of purely physical standpoint, Antony works. He's a good player there. When it's a bit more technical, a bit more space, a bit more about those fine details, and then you break through into space. You see it with Bundesliga all the time. You see it with Spain. Do you know when you watch, and everyone's pointed this out, but do you know when you ever watch highlights of like attackers and strikers from the Bundesliga? Like Jadon Sancho is a good example. People worried about this with Haaland, but obviously he's a different beast. When you watch like goals and highlights, Jadon Sancho, Borussia Dortmund, almost everyone he's just like running through on the goalkeeper. There's like 3 Dortmund players just running through with no defenders near him, because the game is played differently. The game is compressed into these central areas, and it's about fine technical details. And once you've broken through that, there's a lot more space to play into. The Premier League, teams are more stretched, teams sit back a lot more. You don't get those like wide open spaces after these intense sort of bouts of technical ability. Antony works in those other divisions. I think personally, whoever he goes to this summer should be aware of that and should pay the money that he's worth. The problem with Antony is, if you are a team from La Liga or from the Bundesliga or from the Serie A, where there is a bit more of this kind of technical kind of intensity and then space either side of it, you know that because of how bad his time at Manchester United has been, you will never be able to sell him for big money to a Premier League club. And that massively affects his potential sell-on value for any team that's going to buy him. You couldn't spend 50 million on him, because the only teams that will spend more than that for you to make a profit are Premier League teams, and no Premier League team will buy him after this spell at Man United. So you're basically buying Antony knowing that at the very best, you might get a 5 million profit from him from another Spanish team or another German team or another Italian team. you're never going to get that big payday because the only places that give you those big paydays, other than Real Madrid, are Premier League teams. So I'm sure that's a consideration for anyone who's going to buy him. It's like, well, if we get him, he's basically, we're just spending 25 million or 30 million on what he can do for us. The sell-on value is almost irrelevant because Arsenal's never going to go for him now. Chelsea, Liverpool, City will never go for him because he was so poor for United in the last couple of seasons. We've kind of got, it's nice, but the resale value isn't going to be there with Antony. So I'm sure everyone's considering that. Phil Berry says he'll go to Saudi in a couple of years anyway. Yeah, Real recognise Real says, or Saudi. Yeah, Saudi's also the other thing, isn't it? But who knows what the state of the Saudi League will be in 3 to 5 years' time or whenever he leaves the next club, unless he goes to Saudi now. But with Saudi, I don't know. The wheels seem to be moving so fast on the Saudi Arabian involvement in football. I wouldn't be surprised if they're part of the Champions League in a few years, or they are part of different organisations, whether they come under the banner of UEFA or FIFA. I know they're not in Europe by any means, but we've seen Russian teams are part of the Champions League. Parts of Russia are over near Canada, and it's still a European country. So I don't think with the money involved, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump from Saudi and Qatari teams being part of the Champions League. And when that's the case, who knows what will happen? I'm not sure that will happen, but we can imagine these things, can't we? Let's move on a little bit. But before that, what do people make of this, Anthony? Dana says, loving the new hair, Jay. Thank you very much. And Adam Kenny says, Anthony is a scary tiger, not cringe at all. Yeah, that's a good point. What are you talking about, Joe? Russia is Europe. It is, but it's also Asia. And it also covers the entirety of parts of Europe are further east than China. Like, I'm not saying that Russia isn't Europe, but what I'm saying is geography and just, land borders and all that kind of go out the window a little bit when money starts getting involved. The Club World Cup being opened up the way it has and being expanded to this $1 billion tournament isn't a coincidence that it's come after this massive influx of money, after the Qatar World Cup, after Saudi Arabia have spent all this money on bringing football and Western footballers to Saudi Arabia. All of a sudden, we have this world tournament with $1 billion on the line that happens to involve those nations. I'm just saying, I hope it doesn't happen. I know the rules would have to change for it to happen, but I could see a world where Saudi Arabia ends up in Champions League games. I don't think... I mean, from a sort of travel perspective, if you've got to go to the other side of Russia for a Champions League game, it's closer to get to Saudi Arabia. I think all these things, as it stands, couldn't happen, but look at how money and sort of power has changed football in the last 10 years. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. That'll went on a bit of a rampage, isn't it? Let's get into Ekitike. The Athletic football, you understand that Manchester United have inquired about the availability of Eintracht Frankfurt Hugo Ekitike. As previously reported by The Athletic, he is already of interest to Chelsea, but United have made contact with Frankfurt in recent weeks. Now, it says here, the Bundesliga club have so far maintained that Ekitike, who turns 23 this week, will not leave for less than their 100 million asking price. But there was a report this morning out of the Times. I believe we can show the information on that. Not at the moment, we will do in a minute. There's a technical glitch. Coming from, where are we? What's his name now? Apologies, I've forgotten his name. Paul Hurst from the Times, saying that Manchester United want to only spend £60 million on him, which is obviously a crucial distinction because one problem that this deal has always had is not just finding €100 million, but is he worth €100 million? Like, he's a decent player who's had a couple of decent seasons, but realistically, why would he be worth €100 million? Do you know what I mean? Like, look at what he's done. And he's young. Obviously, 22 is young. But he turns 23 in 3 days. So let's be honest. I know we're getting into the old 29, 28 bollocks. He's essentially 23 years old because in 3 days he will be. So you look at a 23-year-old player to have got 26 goals in 64 games for his current club is all right. It's a goal, just better than a goal every 3 matches. While he was at PSG, he got 3 goals in 26 appearances, which is absolutely shocking. And obviously he was younger then, but he was still in his 20s, early 20s, fair enough. But He's playing for the most dominant club in France, and he was in his 20s, and he wasn't scoring. Then you look at the fact that he's completely, massively underachieved on his XG. And I'm not trying to knock him or say that he's not a good player. I think he is a good player. But I don't see where the 100 million euros valuation is coming from. Other than the fact that it's Frankfurt, and these seem to be the masters of getting mad money for alright players. I mean, look at their track record. Let's have a look at this. Frankfurt record sales. Because it is mad. If we bring this up here. They're very, very good at selling players. So their top few sales here, I'll go through from number 6 up. And these have all happened in the last 5 years. So we've got Jesper Lindström, a right winger to Napoli, 30 million euros. 40 million, William Pacho, centre back, gone to PSG. Sebastian Aller, we all remember, went to West Ham for 50 million euros. Luka Jovic went to Real Madrid for 63 million euros. Omar Marmoush went to Man City, again, that one's up in the air in terms of success, for 75 million euros. And Randall Kolo Muani went to PSG for 95 million euros. Of those players, how many have been a success? And actually, how many have been anything other than an absolute outright failure? Aller to West Ham, failure. Jovic to Real Madrid, absolute disgusting failure. Marmoush, I'm not going to include it because he looks a decent player and it's too soon. Kolo Muani to PSG, horrific failure of a transfer as of right now. So this idea that you just give Frankfurt what they want because they've asked for it, to me, it isn't necessarily a good thing. And in fact, it's probably necessarily a bad thing. United need to get good value for this guy. And I think 60 million, as Paul Hurst has mentioned, offers a lot more in terms of value and actual sort of the chance for him to live up to this. And obviously, because Jovic was a failure, because Moana was a failure, that doesn't mean Ekitike will be the different players. You have to value them each on their own merits, and you sort of rate them differently. But this thing of just like, yeah, give Frankfurt a shed load of cash for whoever they've got, I'm not having that personally. Yeah, wouldn't pay anything over 50 to 60 million. That's Hugh Grant. Love that. Marmoush was better than him and he was 63 million. Yeah, that's another point. Marmoush was a few years older, but I agree. Anyone else prefer Mateta for 35 million? I think I would personally. I think Ekitike obviously long term is a better prospect, all of that stuff. But to spend anywhere near 100 million euros on him, I just don't see that as good value whatsoever, personally. And again, it's just, he's going to have so much pressure on him. He's going to have so much interest and eyes on him. You've got to be this guy. You've got to be one of the best strikers in the world, best striker in England, etc., etc. And it's not going to work, is it, for that kind of money? 60 million, I think under 70, and you've got a chance of it working. But yeah, that's a big one. And Paul Hurst, that sort of rounds out all of the top newspapers and publications saying that we are genuinely interested in this guy. I think it seems to be how much that we're willing to pay and how we can spread this money out if we are going to sign him. But obviously, we'll keep an eye on that. Let's move on to this next story then, because this is Jadon Sancho to Napoli, as we mentioned. And this is from United in Focus. Really?
It's from other people as well.
Who else has reported it? Di Marzio. He's been off the game for a bit, hasn't he? He was the guy. Do you remember that? Di Marzio used to be the main man in transfers. It was him, and then after him, there was a few others. Romano. Do you remember Mohamed Bouhafsi? Do you remember him? He was a tier 1 transfer guy. He was top level. He's like presenting the French version of the One Show now. He's doing current affairs. He got out of the transfer game. It was too hot for him. It must be a bit of a nightmare. But anyway, Gianluca Di Marzio was reporting that Napoli are now making an attempt to sign Sancho this summer. Do we have that article? Can we actually go on his version of the article rather than the United in Focus one? Look at this, look. Yeah, let's get it translated. Google Translate exists, doesn't it? Let's do it. Here we go. The latest on the news of the Italian club and the English footballer. Written like some sort of poem, that, isn't it? This one's a tale of an Italian club and an English footballer. After the arrival of Kevin De Bruyne, the Blue Club is making an attempt for Sancho, a player who has returned to Manchester United. He played a total of While in the Conference League, the striker played 8 games, scoring 2 goals and 5 assists. Very nice. Fucking Ad City. Look, is that it?
That's what we're going to use it.
No, it's not why you didn't use it. Producer just said that's why we didn't use that. You had never clicked on that link until I asked you to. Don't give me this. You got lucky that we hadn't used it. That is one of the worst articles I've ever seen. But Di Marzio's fallen off, hasn't he? Let's be honest. I tell you what, though, if Napoli want him, have him. Take Garnacho as well. Actually, have Antony. Because you've sold a few attackers recently. Look, Osimhen's leaving. Kvaratskhelia is gone. I mean, you're basically your best player, Scott McTominay, and we're all proud of him and happy for him. Come on. Yeah, a couple of others in there. He can't be your best player, surely. We'll see. Let's move on to our next story then. Marco Carnesecchi. So here we go. Look at this. Unreadable. Maybe we zoom out a touch on that bad boy. Just a thought. Look at this, look. We're well prepared here for the news this morning. TA. This is an exclusive. And who are TA, for those who are wondering? Tutu Atalanta. They're saying that Man United Carnesecchi, right, the goddess, could falter in the face of 50 million. Wow, look at this. So poetic, Google Translate, isn't it? At Atlanta, the summer is suddenly heating up around the name of Marco Carnesecchi, who has been forcefully ended up under the spotlight of Manchester United. The English club, after a season to forget and the inconsistent performances of Onana, wants to revolutionise the team, starting from the goalposts. And the Nerazzurri goalkeeper is the first choice to open the new cycle. This is brilliant, isn't it? Phil Berry completely agrees. An important evaluation. Carnesecchi is considered a pillar of the Bergamo team, which, however, could falter in the face of an irresistible offer. According to rumours collected by TutoAtalanta.com, the goddess sets the price at around 45 to 50 million euros, a figure that would guarantee a huge capital gain. Given that he is a product of the Atalanta youth system, faced with a concrete and substantial offer from Manchester United, even the Percassi could seriously consider letting the young talent go. Now we come to our old friend, the Meret domino effect, don't we? Is that when you're absolutely desperate for a Domino's, but it actually isn't 24 hours even though you thought it was? Let's read this. The possible departure of Carnesecchi would immediately trigger a domino effect. This is like a Mission Impossible task, isn't it? Your offer, if you choose to accept it, would immediately trigger a domino effect of the goalkeeper market, destabilising national interests. This is where the delicate situation of Alex Meret comes in, who, with only 2 weeks to go before his contract with Napoli expires, has not yet put pen to paper on his renewal and would still have a top-level season with Bergamo, including the Champions League. Atalanta is watching carefully, ready to strike the decisive blow and be ready if necessary, thus ensuring a reliable replacement with international... There you go. Let's get to the next one. Yes. Yes. I've been in my sort of grotto, just calculations on the wall. Just, you come in, it's like a beautiful mind. There's just scribbles, scrawlings, everywhere. I'm just writing. Every surface is covered in calculations because I have uncovered the Galini hypothesis. Okay? My greatest work yet, the Galini hypothesis. And the Galini hypothesis states something very clear. Okay? It is this. This is like a scientific paper now. The Galini hypothesis. I'm going for the Nobel Prize on this bitch. The Galini hypothesis states thus, and this is just a universal fact. It cannot be ruled out that Galini could then return to Bergamo, who now at Roma is reunited with Gasperini, with whom he had no longer had an idyllic relationship, and who shared the goalpost with Meret in the year of the Scudetto, which is, I think, is like the Chinese year of the dragon. The year of the Scudetto in Naples with Luciano Spalletti. And that is just a universal truth. You can unplug the names Galini, Bergamo, Gasperini, put in any problem you have in your life, and the Galini hypothesis will fix it for you. That much is true. So we'll see. Basically, I don't know what any of that said. I have no idea what's going on. But all we can glean is that Onana didn't have a great season for Man United. Right, let's go to our last story then, because this is an interesting one. This is unbelievable. But the Galini hypothesis, I might write a book called that. It might be my first name. I need to come up with an author's name. You need two names, both of them single letter. What's the word? Not consonant. What's it called when you clap along with a word and it tells you? Syllable. Single syllable names, both first names. Frank Thomas. Do you know what I mean? Actually, that's Thomas Frank in reverse. Anyway, Manchester United have held what has been described as positive and constructive talks for Dusan Vlahovic, with the striker reported to have greenlit the move for 2 reasons. What are they? Let's find those 2 reasons, shall we? No way. First up. Wait, what? So it says for 2 reasons. We need to find those 2 reasons. If those 2 reasons aren't in this article, we never quote Team Talk again. Okay? It says there, go back up a sec, let me just read this again. With the striker reported to have greenlit the move for 2 reasons. Okay? If those 2 reasons are not present in the article, I repeat my point, we never use Team Talk as a source ever again. Okay, now we search the article for the 2 reasons that Vlahovic is willing to join Manchester United. Let's get into this. First up, United, no, they're not the reasons. Furthermore, yep, current football transfers, the boss, okay, keep going, please. Still nothing. Where is it?
He believes it's a dream destination.
Juventus made it clear that he sees Old Trafford as a dream destination. Okay, that's reason 1. Now we search for reason 2. Increasing the push for a move, Vlahovic to take an ideal step. Okay, here we go. Keep going down. Keep going down. Vlahovic says yes to Man United for 2 reasons. Okay. The report concludes that the Serbian forward is motivated by the idea of working for Ruben Amorim and playing a more open, physically demanding league. There we go. Well done, Team Talk. Stay for another week, Team Talk. Very proud of you, Team Talk. You've given us the 2 reasons. He likes working with Ruben Amorim and he wants to challenge himself in a more physical league. Now, here's the interesting part, because Vlahovic is a little bit damaged goods in it, let's be honest. He went there, big money, big name, and again, it's kind of been all downhill since. But there's your interest right there. 25 million euros. That's an option. Trying to get his colossal 320 grand a week salary off the bill. I think that what's interesting here is that it seems like United are gathering a sort of a selection of targets with 2 very different sort of skill sets and not skill sets, 2 very different types of player. And much like Total Sport, I am going to tell you the 2 different types. The first one is the expensive one for the future, or certainly one that can kind of play longer term. So this is your Osimhen's, your Gyökeres, your Ekitikes, in their 20s or mid-20s, between 50 and 80 million pounds, top-level striker that can be here for a long time. The other one seems to be the likes of maybe your Matetas, maybe your Danny Welbecks, maybe your Vlahovic. It's an older player or a player with lesser value. I know Vlahovic isn't old, but he's someone that has sort of, you're not expecting him to come in and be fantastic straight away. But you can get him for sort of between 15 and 30 million euros in that ballpark there. I wonder where we'll land by the end of the summer. But it's interesting to me that it doesn't just seem that we only want the sort of perfect big name striker to come in straight away. We're also open to doing things a different way. I think what's clear is United are desperate for a striker. We'll have to wait and see. So, Hamzawi says, clapping, AI writing at its finest. Kevin Aitchison says 320,000 a week. Supposedly, I mean, that's what they're quoting that he's on at Juventus. I don't think he's going to get offered that at United, is he? But we'll have to wait and see. Mateta is better, according to Steve It Out. And Ronaldo Brown predicted this, by the way. Obviously, Ronaldo Brown of this very parish. Transfer window stinks of us signing Dusan Vlahovic late in July. And he might be right, although it might be a little bit earlier than he thinks. I think we're not very far advanced on that Vlahovic stuff whatsoever. But this is what I mean. United might get a little bit desperate and go for a different profile toward the end of the summer. As long as it makes sense and we don't splash big money on someone that we don't want to buy, I'm all right with it. That's going to be all from us. We'll be back later on. I'm going to be chatting to Dharmesh Sheth, getting the latest on all of the transfer news. Where are we up to with Ekitike? Which players are going to get sold? Can Manchester United sort out this Brian and Mbumo deal, or are Tottenham going to squeak in? Find out later today. Make sure you stay tuned to Stretford Paddock. Thank you for joining us. This has been the news. We'll see you in a bit.